controversy is mounting on the reported deal that the Likud reached to appoint Avi Maoz, head of the far-right Noam faction, as head of a new, quote, Bureau of Jewish Identity in the office of incoming Premier Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, Maoz has spoken in inflammatory language about Israel's Arab sector and the LGBTQ community, and his new role will reportedly give him authority over this, what's called the Cross-Sector Partnerships Unit within the PMO, which oversees the cooperation between ministries and local governments with civil society organizations. Speaking to journalists, Maoz made clear the kind of groups he wants to see banned from working with government, including those that promote Arab-Jewish coexistence and LGBTQ tolerance. Among the ones he specifically mentioned was the Abraham Initiatives, whose stated goal is, quote, a state which is the national homeland of the Jewish people and a full and complete and equal home for its Arab-Palestinian national minority. Now, Maoz told I-24 News today that, quote, the Abraham Initiatives of the New Israel Fund is another progressive organization which works in an undemocratic and dishonest way to change Israel from within, from a Jewish state to a state of all its citizens. This organization, quote, trained the senior officers and the police, brainwashing them as if their role was to be a UN force, as was evident in the riots of May 2021. And none of this prevented Ayelet Shaked from promoting the organization within her office and letting it treat violence in Arab society, treatment from the progressive, regressive perspective, and not from understanding the conflict between Israel and its domestic enemies is a national conflict. Soon we will remove the Abraham Initiative from all state systems and restore the consciousness of the Jewish state. Well, joining us now for response to that is Anton Goodman, Director of Development at the Abraham Initiatives in Jerusalem. And Anton, maybe first a response to that. Many of your viewers may not be familiar with the Abraham Initiatives. It doesn't actually make the headlines here the way that more political-oriented groups that deal with the Arab sector do. So your response to that?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, Calev. Yes, the Abraham Initiatives is a long-running Jewish-Arab NGO within Israel, advancing shared society and equality between the Jewish minority and the Arab minority within Israel. And to be honest, there's nothing short of Orwellian to see Avi Maoz appointed to this position within the Prime Minister's office, where he is going to be directing the government's interactions with civil society organizations. In this position, he's going to wield power that can do real damage to Israel's democracy.
Right. And, you know, it's interesting. His quote sort of highlights one interesting aspect, which is your group does cooperate with governments in a way that groups that are more, let's say, take a more oppositional approach, you could say Dollar or B'Tselem. If he does get in this position, what influence could he have on the cooperative ventures that you do have with, for example, even the outgoing government?
You're exactly right, Calev, because the Abraham Initiatives have got a long and rich history of working with government ministries to improve policies, to achieve progress, to close economic gaps, and to integrate Israeli society, and ultimately to ensure good relations between Jews and Arabs in Israel. And so when you ask, well, what can Maoz do in this position? Well, the question's really been answered this week as well, since we were actually involved in a joint venture with the Ministry of Interior, a program that was about to be signed, training imams throughout Arab society in Israel to become change makers on the issues of crime and violence. And due to Maoz's involvement, this has now been frozen. And so we're already feeling the impacts of his influence in this role.
Right, and that, I'll just say for some of our viewers, that was the reference to the outgoing Interior Minister, Ayelet Shaked, who is, you know, her views are certainly not in the progressive camp, you might say. Now,
that's exactly right, because the Abraham Initiatives has prided itself on working with all parties across the political spectrum. But what we're seeing now really is a witch hunt on McCarthy-like proportions. And it's important that we're not manipulated by Maoz's narrative here, because this really isn't about the Abraham Initiatives. It's about the role that we're playing within society. And when I look at this program, it was about training imams to be key players against crime and violence. It's addressing one of the most burning concerns, not just within Arab society, but within Israeli society as a whole. And if he's going to come into this position and halt and freeze anything that he sees as progressive, he's actually going to harm people on the street.
Right. But the voters have spoken, Anton, and they voted in a government that is going to take certainly a different position than previous ones. I'm just thinking in terms of your own organization, how are you planning to maybe deal with what may be coming the way of the Abraham Initiatives and other groups like it, for example, in the coming months, if not years?
So Maoz claims that the Abraham Initiatives is in some way an agent working to stop the police doing their role within Israel, when the reality of the situation is we have been advocating for increased funding for policing services to Arab communities for years within Israel. And it's only the last government that made an unprecedented investment in this field. There was a government resolution passed, 2.4 billion shekel, towards tackling crime and violence in Arab society. And our role now, that Avi Maoz and others of his kind for joining the government, our role is to really monitor that the implementation of these important programs is going to take place, hold the government to task, and try to work with civil service to make sure that they're delivering.
All right. I should note that some members of this incoming government have said that they're going to make a priority tackling that violence. But, of course, we'll have to see in the way that they go about it. Certainly the cooperation of the Arab sector would be vital in that. Anton Goodman of the Abraham Initiatives, thank you for joining us on I-24 News.
Thank you so much, Calev.